I want to start today with the part nobody on the financial channels wants to say out loud. Gold going up is not really a story about gold. It is a story about the things sitting under your gold, under your savings, under your pension check, under every dollar you have ever worked for. And that thing is quietly failing. When gold climbs to a number people once thought was impossible, the polite explanation is that gold got more valuable. The honest explanation is harder to hear. The measuring stick got shorter. The dollar in your pocket is buying less, and the market is telling you so in the only language it has left. So, if you are a retiree right now, watching the price of gold do things that make no sense against everything you were taught, I need you to sit with me for the next few minutes. Because this is not about getting rich. It is about understanding what is actually happening to the money you plan to live on for the rest of your life. There is a specific reason the people who profit from your confidence would rather you never connect these dots. And by the time we are done, you will see it as plainly as I do. Here's the first thing I want to put in your hands, and it is not a price, it is a fact. Gold recently passed the euro to become the second largest reserve asset held by the central banks of the world, sitting behind only the United States dollar. Think about who those buyers are. Not nervous retail investors, not people chasing a trend. The most sophisticated, most cautious, most patient institutions on the planet, the ones that print the currencies, are quietly trading their paper money for metal. When the people who make the money start hoarding gold instead, that is not a rally. That is a message, and they are not sending it to you. To understand why, I need to take you back to a single afternoon that most Americans have completely forgotten, even though every single thing in your financial life still runs on what happened that day. It is the real story under this whole video, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Go back to the early 1970s. For a generation before that, the world ran on a promise. The American dollar was as good as gold. Literally. Foreign governments could bring their dollars to the United States and exchange them for actual metal at a fixed rate. That promise was the floor under the entire system. It was the reason a dollar felt like a rock. Your parents saved in that dollar because it did not move under their feet. There was a hard, physical anchor holding it in place, and everyone knew it. Then, one Sunday evening, a president went on television and told the country that the window where foreign nations could trade their dollars for gold was being closed. He called it temporary. That word matters. Temporary. A pause, a breathing spell, a measure to protect the dollar from speculators, and then things would go back to normal. Families heard the word temporary and went back to their dinners. The markets exhaled. And that temporary suspension has now lasted for more than half a century, and it has never, not for one single day, been reversed. That is the part nobody wants to hear. The real event was not a policy tweak. The real event was the floor under the dollar being quietly removed and the door being locked behind it. From that night forward, your dollar was no longer anchored to anything you could hold. It was anchored to a promise, to confidence, to the word of institutions. And the price of gold has spent every year since then measuring exactly how much that promise is worth. Let me show you what that unanchoring actually did, because the numbers are almost hard to believe. In the years around that closed window, gold was priced in the mid-tens of dollars an ounce. By the end of that same decade, it had climbed past 800. That is not a rally. That is a revaluation of the dollar itself, playing out in slow motion, right in front of a country that had been told it was temporary. Gold did not suddenly become 20 sometimes more useful in 10 years. The dollar simply revealed in public how much ground it had lost the moment its anchor was cut. And here is what makes the story land even harder for someone at or near retirement. That closed window was not some accident of markets or act of nature. It was a decision. One man, one Sunday broadcast, one stroke of a pen, and the anchor under every dollar you own was simply cut on an afternoon you had no vote in and no warning of, and it has never once been undone. I am not telling you that to frighten you. I am telling you so you understand one durable truth. The rules that sit underneath your savings are policy, not law of nature. They can be and have been changed by people in rooms you will never enter, on afternoons you will never hear about until it is done. Now, let me connect this to your kitchen table, because that is where this actually lives. If you have spent your whole life doing the responsible thing, saving in dollars, trusting that a dollar saved is a dollar kept, then this history is not ancient. It is the ground you are standing on. Every retirement projection you have ever been handed assumes the measuring stick stays honest. It assumes the dollar you save today buys roughly what it will need to buy in 15 or 20 years. And the entire lesson of that closed gold window is that the measuring stick does not stay honest. It has been getting quietly shorter for 50 years, and gold has been keeping the receipts the whole time. I want to pause here because this is exactly the moment where a lot of retirees feel a knot in their stomach and do not know what to do with it. So let me give you something practical, and then we will get right back to the history. For a long time now, central banks have been buying gold at a pace we haven't seen in generations, more than 1,000 tons a year for 3 straight years, roughly double the pace of the decade before. They are protecting themselves from exactly the erosion we are talking about. And here is the part almost nobody tells the ordinary saver. There is a completely legal, established way for you to do the very same thing inside the retirement account you already have. You can move a portion of an existing 401k or IRA into physical gold and silver, real metal, without triggering taxes and without triggering penalties, using what is called a self-directed precious metals IRA. This is not some exotic loophole for insiders. If you have $100,000 or more in any retirement account, this is squarely for you. We put together a plain English guide that walks through exactly how it works. If you are watching this on your television, just scan the QR code on your screen. If you are on your phone or your computer, go to jeffreedguide.com. It costs you nothing to understand your options, and understanding is the whole point of this channel. There is one more piece of that early 70s story that almost never gets told, and it is the piece that should stay with you. Before the window was closed, a group of nations had actually tried to hold the old gold price in place by force. They pooled their reserves and spent them into the market, day after day, defending that fixed number, insisting it would hold. And then, quietly, they gave up and abandoned the defense overnight. The official line stayed calm right up until the moment it did not. That is how these things always go. The floor is solid, the promise is firm, the word is temporary. Everything is under control. And then, one morning, it simply is not, and the people who trusted the calm are the last to find out. The market does not ring a bell. It just reprices, and the reasons get explained afterward. And understand, this is not only an American story, it is the quiet condition of paper money everywhere. Across the developed world, central banks have spent decades holding savers near zero and quietly inflating their debts away, a slow and patient erosion that never makes a dramatic headline, but hollows out a lifetime of careful saving all the same. In parts of the world this very decade, ordinary savers have watched their bank deposits get trapped, frozen, or simply lose most of their value while they stood by helpless, having done nothing wrong except trust the currency they were handed. This is the thing gold has always answered. Gold is not somebody else's promise. It is not a line in a bank's ledger that can be trapped or switched off. It is the one financial asset that is not simultaneously somebody else's liability. That is the whole reason the central banks want it, and that is the whole reason it holds when the promises do not. Now, back to the story, because there is a piece of it that the people selling you fear conveniently skip. The road up is not a straight line, not even close. In the middle of that legendary 1970s run, gold did something brutal. After a strong climb, it turned around and fell by nearly half, cut almost in two, right in the middle of the greatest gold decade of the modern era. Imagine being the saver who finally believed the story, bought in, and then watched it collapse. Most of them sold. They decided they had been fools. And then gold turned and multiplied roughly 8 times over from that low into its peak. The people who understood the why held on through the terror. The people who only knew the price got shaken out at the worst possible moment. That is not an accident, and it is not bad luck. That is the machine working exactly as designed. And I need you to understand who runs the machine, because they are the quiet enemy running under this entire story. The big trading desks, the institutions that sit between you and the metal, do not make their money when you calmly hold. They make their money on your fear and your churn. When a frightened retiree dumps his position into a sharp drop, someone is standing there, happy to take it off his hands at a discount. The violent shakeouts are not a flaw in the system. For them, they are the business model. And the financial media that runs on their advertising is not going to be the one to explain that to you. You have seen this movie more recently, too. When a mere hint arrived that the Federal Reserve might slow down its support of the markets, gold fell hard in a single year, badly enough to convince a lot of people the whole story was over. Nothing about the fundamental picture had changed. The dollar's long erosion had not stopped, but the price lurched. The headlines turned negative, and ordinary savers were once again shaken loose right before the next leg higher. During the Great Financial Panic, gold was actually sold off hard for a stretch, not because it failed, but because it was one of the only things people could quickly sell to raise cash. And then it recovered and pushed on to new ground once the fear passed. The lesson repeats and repeats. The people who know why they own it survive the shakeout. The people who only watch the number do not. Here is the midpoint turn, the part that actually changes how you should think about all of this. For most of my career, there was an iron rule in the markets. When real interest rates rose, gold was supposed to fall. It was as reliable as gravity. Higher yields made the dollar more attractive to hold, so gold, which pays no interest, was supposed to lose. And in recent years, that rule broke. Gold has climbed even while real yields stayed high, even with a Federal Reserve that is anything but eager to cut. The old inverse relationship simply stopped working. Ask yourself why. Why would gold rise in the exact conditions that are supposed to crush it? The answer is the whole thesis of this video. Because the buyer setting the price is no longer the yield-chasing trader. It is the central bank, buying metal for reasons that have nothing to do with this month's interest rate, and everything to do with the erosion we started with. There is a reason this accumulation accelerated in recent years. When one major nation's foreign currency reserves were frozen by other countries in a dispute, every central bank on Earth quietly learned the same lesson at the same moment. Money you hold as someone else's paper can be switched off. Gold sitting in your own vault cannot be frozen by another country. It answers to no one. And once the largest, most careful institutions in the world decided that mattered, the old rules governing gold's price stopped applying. That is why gold can rise toward numbers that used to sound absurd, even while the Fed holds firm. The engine changed. I want to be very honest with you here, because the fear sellers never are. I am not promising you a price. I am not promising you a date. Anyone who looks you in the eye and tells you gold hits a specific number by a specific month is guessing, or worse, selling. What I am giving you is a case, a strong one, built on real history and real institutional behavior. But it is a case and not a guarantee, and it is not personal financial advice for your particular situation. Gold is volatile. It has cut itself nearly in half in the middle of a bull market before, and it can do it again. Which is exactly why the how of owning it matters as much as the whether. So let me give you the practical beat, the part one I would tell my own family. If you decide this belongs in your life, own the real thing, the physical metal, not a paper claim that promises you metal you will never actually see. Size the position so that a sharp drop, and there will be sharp drops, can never force you to sell at a bottom to cover something else. That is how the shakeout beats people. Not because they were wrong about the long story, but because they were too big, too leveraged, too exposed, and the volatility forced their hand. Own it in a size that lets you sleep, and then let the 50-year story do its work. Do not sell into the shakeout. That is the whole game. And now I want to say the thing that matters most, the recognition moment, because it is the reason any of this is urgent without a single fake deadline. Right now, you are early. I know it does not feel that way when gold is already making headlines, but look at who is actually positioned. The central banks are in. The smartest, most patient money on earth has already made its move, and is still making it. The mainstream, though, the pension funds, the ordinary advisors, the neighbor down the street, they have not caught on. Gold is not yet the thing every dinner table is talking about. There is no line around the block. And that gap between what the smart money already knows and what the crowd has not yet realized, that gap is the entire opportunity. Because by the time it becomes obvious to everyone, by the time every channel leads with it and every advisor finally recommends it, the easy part of the move will already be behind us. Nobody sends you an invitation to this. Nobody is going to call you and tell you the floor gave way in 1971 and the bill is finally coming due. You either understand it before the crowd, or you arrive with the crowd, late. So let me answer the question in the title as directly as I can. When gold reaches a number that once seemed impossible, the part nobody wants to hear is this. It is not gold shouting that it got precious. It is your currency quietly admitting that the anchor came out from under it half a century ago and was never put back. Gold at a shocking number is not the good news story or the scary story the headlines make it. It is a receipt. It is the bill for a promise that was called temporary and never honored. And the only people who get hurt by a receipt are the ones who did not know they owed anything. That brings me to the last thing, and it is for those of you who stayed with me all the way to the end, because you are exactly the person this is meant for. If you have $100,000 or more in a 401k or an IRA, we hold a free one-on-one educational web conference, no obligation and no cost, where a specialist walks through your specific situation and exactly how this physical metal strategy would or would not fit what you already have. Just mention that you watched this all the way through. And here is the honest reason to do it now, not out of any fake urgency. The window to make a calm, clear-headed decision about protecting your savings is exactly the window when nothing feels like an emergency, when the choice is still cheap and fully reversible. That window is open right now. The worst time to learn how a fire escape works is when the building is already smoking. If you are watching on your television, scan the QR code on your screen. If you are on your phone or your computer, go to jeffweedguide.com. Take the calm hour now while you still have it, so that whatever the dollar does next, you are the one holding the anchor and not the one still trusting upon us.